All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We have been in anticipation, waiting for this day to come, and we are just so excited to have each and every one of you take time out of your day, your week, to spend time with us here today. So today is going to be about the ins and outs of PEAR. We're going to be taking it back to the basics. We, again, are just very excited and feeling very blessed that you are here with us today, and we are going to jump in. So norms for the session: be humble and willing to grapple with challenging ideas, find your learning edge and push it, recognize how your own social positionality, race, class, gender, sexuality, ability informs your perspectives and reactions. And just that, want to highlight that one more time, just really thinking of our frame of reference and how we show up based upon how that's been developed over time since birth all the way to where we are now. And accept that discomfort is necessary for growth. Use defensive reactions as entry points to build a deeper understanding. So really leaning in and trying to work past that, working past shutting down and really leaning in to really understand and dig deeper. And then speak from your own experience without generalizing. And stay engaged and hold space for others. Be willing to extend grace to others and ourselves as we speak and process out loud. And so throughout this session, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We have a fabulous moderator here, Rook, that we are really pleased to be able to share space with. And so if you have questions, please drop it in the chat. So take a moment, look at the norms, and think through which one are you going to really focus on this session and really keep at the forefront of your mind. And when you've done that, please just give a thumbs up, and then we'll transition to our introductions. All right, going to transition to our next slide. Okay, so it's really important for our self-care, especially when we are in this work and just doing our day-to-day work, to take those moments throughout the day to really lean into our self-care and taking those moments. And so we want to start our session today with an energizing moment icebreaker. So feel free to turn your camera off or keep your camera on, and I'm going to lead us in our energizing moment. Throughout the day, feel free to do these, and we hope that you carry this on in your work even after this session. So the first one is going to be our wrist forearm stretch. So you're going to stretch your arm out in front of you, and then you're going to slowly put your fingers down until you feel a stretch. You're going to use the other hand to pull hard toward the body, and you're going to hold that position for 3 to 5 seconds. Oh, that feels good. And then you're going to point your fingers up into the air until you feel that stretch. And then you're just going to pull back for 3 to 5 seconds. And then we're going to switch to the other hand and do that. Pulling down, pulling back towards yourself. And then doing the same again to the top. All right, in the shoulder pull, you're more than welcome to sit or stand, and you're just gonna pull your arm over your chest and feel that pull. Give it a nice squeeze. You're going to do it to the other side. Getting that nice stretch. All right, and then we're going to do the seated chest and back stretch. So clasp your hands behind your lower back and push your chest towards and raise your chin. And then you're going to hold that for 10 or 15 seconds. If you need to take a break in between that, please take care of yourself. And then you're going to relax. And then you can hold your hands out in front of you, palms facing down, and lower your head in line with your arms and round your upper back for that nice stretch. Hold that for 10 or 15 seconds. You can take some breaths here, close your eyes, get yourself centered for this dialogue and conversation we're going to lean into. And then the last stretch is our seated ankle roll. So you're going to stay seated, lift your leg up. I know you can't see mine. I am wearing leather boots, knee high. And so I'm just rolling those around. About 10 seconds, 10 times. You can switch the rotation of that. You set that foot down and then lift up with the other leg. And rotate about 10 times. And then rotate back the other way. All right, so that is going to end our energizing moment. Again, please take care of yourself throughout this presentation and throughout the day, whether that's getting water, stretching, using one of these, or your own. Self-care is so important just day to day, and especially leading in and leading this work. So next we're going to move to our introductions. You can see me in the top right corner. I think it may be left on yours, but if not, it's top right. I have bluish green eyes. I have pinkish lips. I have blonde hair depending on the season. I'm about 5'3". Today I'm wearing a leopard print jacket, one of my faves, a black shirt and black pants, and then black knee-high boots. I am Katrina Tuggle, and I am a pro-equity consultant. I'm super excited to be here. My previous background is in public education, where I served K through 12 as a community partner, a teacher, a dean of students, a family liaison, assistant principal, and principal. And so I'm super excited to be on the Office of Equity team, leading and supporting this work of systems and developing relationships. A fun fact about me is I absolutely love going to the Goodwill. I ask for Goodwill gift certificates. I love finding treats and treasures there. It literally is my favorite thing to do. And then I will pass it to B, who will introduce themselves. I also use she, her pronouns. So B.
Thanks, Katrina. Hi, everyone. Good morning. B. Hill, Pro-Equity Consultant Manager with the Office of Equity. My pronouns are they, them. Today, I'm wearing a black hat, which typically you will find me in a good hat. I love hats. Wearing gold frame glasses, also a black and burgundy polo button up. And so just a little about me. Fun fact about me, I'll give you two. I am a classic car enthusiast, and I'm also a professional DJ as well. So things that I like to do in my spare time, cars and DJing. And so what led me to the Office of Equity, I would say my lived experience being a Black, non-binary, queer person. I feel I have a unique experience and set of skills that I felt could best be utilized in doing change work and the work of anti-racism and the work of being centered in pro-equity. Prior to my position here, I worked for the city of Seattle as a equity and engagement strategic advisor. Also worked for a equity, belonging, and inclusion consulting firm as well throughout the state of Washington. And prior to that, I worked in Parks and Recreation in aquatics management. I worked in aquatics management for about 17 years. And that was my experience of truly taking anti-racism from theory to action and embedding in aquatic services. And we know the historical, aspects of swimming and access to swimming and aquatic activities, particularly in Black and Brown communities. So taking theory into action and providing program and service equity through aquatic services. So that's a little about me, and I'm going to pass it off to my team member, Rueben.
Thank you so much, B. My name is Rueben Otero. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. If I had my camera on today, you'd see that I am laying down and resting a back injury. I want to just give a little space for folks showing up how they feel today. Fun fact about me, I sew my own quilts and clothing. So if we ever see each other in person, you might see me in a self-made jacket, or I recently conquered the task of making jeans, which, gosh, I'm looking forward to doing it again, but it's a toughie. I am a pro equity consultant alongside B and Katrina. I have 7 years teaching experience, and then about coming up on 3 years experience with the state. I worked for the Department of Health. Throughout this, I have a history of working in my spare time with different queer organizations like the Seattle Frontrunners. I'm also involved in the Rainbow Alliance Inclusion Network, which is the queer business resource group here in Washington State. Really what led me to this work here in the Office of Equity in pro-equity anti-racism work is my experiences as a queer person in the United States and teaching. There are so many things that are going on that really highlight the inequities in our state and country. And I have been trying to get into this work so that I can make an impact and bring my point of view and bring my privileges to the forefront so that I can use them to dismantle the systems of oppression that are around us. And of course, it's not work that one does alone. And so I'm so happy to be here today with this team.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rueben and B. And our team is made up of 6 strong, passionate individuals. So on the screen, you'll see Kalima, and then you will also see Catherine, and you will also see Jasmine. It's a tremendous team, tremendous passion, tremendous giftings and abilities. And we are so excited again to be here. And whether we've started our journey with you already, working with you in whatever the capacity is, or if we will be working with you in the coming weeks and months, we are just eager, ready, and are looking forward to our work with you. So the agenda overview is we've taken care of the welcome and the norms, the icebreaker, and then we'll be jumping into the history of the Office of Equity and PEAR, why we have changed Washington so drastically, what this work requires from us all. And then we'll jump into an interactive activity. We'll discuss the PEAR ecosystem, as well as the ecosystem in action and strategies and actions, and wrap up in next steps. And so again, there will be some elements of sit and get, and then there's also going to be elements that have been intentionally planned of discussion and dialogue and application. That was something that was really important to us, is really thinking through the application and what you can take away from each session today and then go and apply. So that was something that, again, was very intentional for you all to have strategies, resources, and action steps. And with that, I will hand it over to B.
All right, thanks again, Katrina. In that slide that went by really quickly, we're going to talk about the history of the Office of Equity in the PEAR Plan and Playbook, but we're going to, briefly touch on that because we want to get into, our knowledge building portion and also our engagement activities that we have. So for me, I'm just going to make sure I'm clear and transparent with everyone. My presentation pieces are heavily knowledge building, so I'll do a lot of talking. So hopefully you're enjoying my voice because I will be doing a lot of talking. We're going to be talking about back to the basics, right? And really focusing on the foundational elements to develop and sustain a PEAR ecosystem. However, what we're going to talk about, it's going to start with self-reflection. It's going to start with self-accountability and taking ownership. So with that reflection, we're going to give action steps as well, because it starts with self, it starts with our engagement and relationship with each other to build and sustain a PEAR ecosystem. And again, PEAR being pro-equity and anti-racism. And so basically, if I encompass it all, it's what this work requires from all of us to move into a PEAR ecosystem and develop and sustain it. So again, PEAR ecosystem overview will be given, PEAR ecosystem in action, and PEAR strategies in action. That's what we'll touch on today. All right, we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so 2019, Office of Equity Task Force was created, and also the task force held public meetings between August and December to create recommendations for the new Washington State Office of Equity. In 2020, the office was established, and then we had the executive orders, right, 2202 and 2204, as well as the Washington State statute being enacted, the RCW 4306D. In 2021, state agencies and Office of Equity conducted baseline equity assessments and listened to thousands of community members and state employees for the state's 5-year equity strategic plan. And in 2022, PEAR Plan and Playbook, again, pro-equity and anti-racism plan and playbook. All of this input was incorporated to create the PEAR ecosystem plan and playbook. And that is a statewide strategy that calls for state agencies and communities to work together to achieve equity and justice statewide. Also, the 2022 summit was also conducted in that year. And so in 2023, the office has also focused heavily on building its capacity. So by the end of this year, the hope is to have a full team of 34 to 35 team members joining the Office of Equity to build the capacity to support and to lead and to guide and assist the state in doing the work of building a PEAR ecosystem. All right, so next slide, please. So why change Washington so drastically? So why not? Because we know that we need to protect Washingtonians with inclusivity, equity, justice, and belonging. And we also recognize that we still have a long way to go. So even though Washington State had 14 state executive orders, 8 state regulations, 35 state statutes, the people who are a part of this great state and the governing body recognize the work is not done, and there's still something missing. And so there's still much work to do. And you will see that on the next slide. And just give you a moment to kind of take that one in. All right, so next, that diversity of Washington's population has increased over the last several decades. And so with that knowledge, and data shows us this as well, as the demographics of our state changes, people from historically and currently marginalized groups still do not have the same opportunities to experience health, wealth, and well-being as as their non-marginalized counterparts. And so we can go to the next slide so folks can see that as well. Oh, we got some transitions in this one. Let's get through these transitions. Always good animation there. So here's where we are. And if you look down and where it says number 2 is the demographics of our state change. If you look at number 2, inequities based on race, ethnicity, gender, and other characteristics continue to be deep, pervasive, and persistent. And they come at a great economic and social cost. And we say consider the cost, and cost is not always monetary cost. We have to consider also the social cost, the impact on people, that social cost. And number 3, the work happening in agencies to address the disparate outcomes faced by people from historically and currently marginalized groups is fragmented across state government. So this is why we need to change Washington so drastically. Next slide, please. And so this is where we move into PEAR and the vision of pro-equity and anti-racism, and building that ecosystem, recognizing the vision and the mission. So our vision is everyone in Washington has full access to opportunities, power, and resources they need to flourish and achieve their full potential. And to accomplish this vision, we have a mission to promote equitable access to opportunities, power, and resources across government that reduces disparities and improve outcomes statewide. We are envisioning as a state to remain the #1 place to live in the nation and to become a belonging state. Our state government must be able to implement a pro-equity, anti-racism approach that goes beyond meeting government mandates and legal compliance. It is about recognizing that a state workplace must center a culture of equity, justice, access, and belonging. It is about state agencies and communities that are traditionally left out and left behind working together toward reaching our broad shared goal of achieving equity. Next slide, please. So what this work requires from us all. So entering a state of change readiness. This is change work. We must change the status quo, what is existing, dismantle, disrupt, and build anew. Reinforce those things that are existing, that are centered in anti-racism, equity, and justice. So entering a state of change readiness. So in this portion of the presentation, we'll talk about the steps of change readiness and also give some action steps to go along with them. So this is, again, building the foundation for change to happen. We have to build the foundation for change to happen in order to develop and sustain, most importantly, and sustain a PEAR ecosystem. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll look at step 1. So think of ourselves as leaders, even if we don't occupy traditional leadership roles. And so if I could ask where you feel free to share, I want to ask you, even if you aren't in what is considered a leadership role, whether it's a traditional leadership role, why we should think of ourselves as leaders, even if we aren't in those traditional leadership roles. And so I'm just going to give like a minute or so for folks if you want to just kind of put it in the chat, and we'll just go deeper into leadership. See, every little step from us builds momentum. Lead by example. Leading from the sidelines is powerful, and they're flooding in, and I can't read them all as they flood in, but I just want to just jump up, just kind of highlight some that I see. We all have our part to make real change. Everyone has a leader within. You don't have to have a title. Yes, to advocate, you advocate. Influence. I saw, no, can't be a silent ally. I'm a leader for those that can't speak. You don't need to be a leader to do the right thing. Thank you. And keep them rolling in. Just keep them rolling in. We're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit more about step 1. So leadership. So the characteristics of leadership include the ability to affect change, facilitate change, take action for change, influence change, pull, lead, and guide people along. So we don't have to be in traditional leadership roles to do this. We all have personal agency to do these things. Everyone has these 3 things in their position that is relational to someone else. Power, privilege, resources. We all have power, privilege, resources in relationship to someone else. And we'll break down power, privilege, and resources in being in relationship to someone else in some slides to come. But a leader is aware of their position in life, what they have, and how to use both aspects to affect change. So you have the capability to do this too. Next slide, please. And so in the next slide, you see your relational positioning. So we're saying relational, state of being in relationship with, or a state of your existence in relationship to these, I would say, positions, right? Yourself in your immediate environment, yourself in society, and self in the world. And then breaking down, still focusing on you in your relational positioning in your job, with your friends, family, and community. And so let's continue to break down power, privilege, and resources in your relational positioning. And we'll look at that in the next slide. And so this gives, some definitions, some insight into power, privilege, and resources. Power being, a dominant identity group with the ability to control, regulate, and govern another identity group. Privilege is exclusive rights, advantages, and in some cases, a person is given by the identity group that they belong to, which has power and resources. And then when we say the word resources, that's time, energy, wealth, your connections, so relationships, knowledge, and skills. So everyone has it, but the amount, how much, depends on you as an individual and the identity groups you are a part of. And I feel like I need to say that again because that is key. Everyone has it, but the amount, how much, depends on you as an individual and the identity groups you are a part of. Next slide, please. So with step 1 in leadership, actions to take. So on the right-hand side, you see the wheel of power and privilege. And so that's your relational positioning. And so it's breaking down in here, I'll just name out a few based on education, ability, health, sexuality, mental health, religion, housing, wealth, language, gender, citizenship, skin color. It breaks it down into where we see marginalized groups, communities, and folks, and also where power and privilege exist based on those certain characteristics of a person. So actions to take, think about what power, privileges, and resources you have. And it says make a chart, but really identify those things, and then compare what you have identified to your relational positioning. And in your relational positioning, think about where your power, privileges, and resources have the greatest proximity and impact for change in each aspect of your life. So change in your life, change in your position at work, change in your community, change where you can affect change. Think about your relational positioning. How does this inform you of your space, power, and privilege, and access to resources? Where can you lead yourself, your team members, your agency to develop and sustain a PEAR ecosystem? So that's step 1. So we'll move to step 2. And that's in the next slide. And so with that one that just went by quickly, can you drop in the chat, what movie is that from? It says, with great power comes great responsibility. So if you just drop in the chat what movie that comes from, yeah, Spider-Man. So in the next slide, we kind of repurpose that statement. With power, privilege, and resources comes great responsibility, and that's ownership. The work of anti-racism, pro-equity, building and sustaining a PEAR ecosystem, you have to take ownership in doing it. So let's break down step 2 in the next slide. So with ownership, you are the hero, or you could be the villain of your own story and how you impact people as well. We have to take ownership of what we do and how it impacts the people around us. When you're doing change work and implementing PEAR, relational partnerships with community is the foundation of our work. A PEAR ecosystem, implementing the PEAR framework, it is not being done correctly, intentionally, or it will not be done effectively if we don't start with relationship and building relationship with community, and community is leading and guiding the foundation of our work. It must start with relational partnership. So we must own building relationships that are heart-centered and not transactional and not extractive from community. Next slide. So, actions to take. So it starts with self-healing as well, and self-reflection and recognition of where you are, taking an assessment of self. It starts with living in alignment with our values and the best version of ourselves. We do not claim perfectionism, because being perfect and perfectionism is not a real thing that can be achieved, but being the best version of ourselves, that's where we can achieve. It's also requiring us to recognize and meet our own needs. So if you think about completing the phrases below, think about the 3 words that describe me when I'm at my best, the 3 words that describe how I want to show up in my relationships, and the 3 words that describe my contributions to my community. So relational partnerships are the essence of our work. How can you build relationships in your PEAR process and in your work? And then think about that and write some actions to take with you or keep with you, using the values that you see to the right. And the values that you see to the right are truth, reconciliation, trust, and hope. Next slide, please. Okay, step 3. Discover what helps us stay aware of our ownership. So we've taken the ownership. We've said we have a willingness to develop to sustain a PEAR ecosystem. We've taken ownership of that. However, we also still need to stay aware and be, I would say, resilient in that, in finding purpose. So step 3 is finding purpose. All right, next slide. So, your purpose must be deeper than the sun and deeper than the North Star. We have a very prolific person that helped us create this this presentation. So deeper than the sun and deeper than the North Star. Your purpose must keep you consistent, disciplined, and rooted when faced with obstacles. We have to recognize that the work of anti-racism, the work of pro-equity, calls us to step outside of our comforts, and wherever those comforts may lie, in the job, just saying it doesn't affect me, and having this laziness or attitude of apathy towards doing the work, and distractions as well. And a solid and true purpose is modeled off you as a person and requires honesty of the self. Next slide. And so the next slide talks about actions to take for step 3. And so it's getting and really, again, self-reflection, right? So take a personality test. We know one of the most, I would say, well-known ones is the Myers-Briggs test, right? Examine significant and non-significant, what you would consider significant or non-significant events in your life, and pinpoint what helped you move forward. Examine if the reasons you applied for the position that you're in are the same reasons you're still here in the space today, and if they have been enough to get you through your workday. Because, and all this goes to talk about change work requires discipline, consistency, anti-racism, pro-equity. It requires consistent action, have to be in action. It requires discipline, consistency, and being rooted while also being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So ask yourself if the purpose you choose fits the requirements of change work. You're here for a reason, and maybe that reason is as simple as this is a good job, or complex as a higher calling. But whatever your it is, let it guide you. With discipline and consistency, in saying discipline and consistency, that means continuous action. You can make just about anything happen. Our dream is for an equitable Washington where all can thrive. And so just continue to think about your purpose and also think about how you can support others and what support you need in this work. Next slide, please. So step 4, think about societal illness that can block our path to internal change. So we're going to talk about life cycle of biases and internalized oppression. Those two things are highlighted as what are the things that perpetuate and uphold the status quo? What are those things that block and create obstacles for change? And we want to highlight 2 of biases and internalized oppression. So next slide. So starting with life cycle of biases. So biases, let's break it down. It's attitudes, beliefs, and feelings that shape discourse, meaning speech and actions. Biases can form from the environment we live in, the social media we consume, the news we watch, and identity groups we belong to. They can also form from individual interactions, experience we have with each other, and turn into influencing how we view a group as a whole. Biases are natural to have. We each have biases. They are what make us human. However, biases can be reinforced when one interaction or experience reflects other interactions and experiences with the same and similar outcome. Biases don't change unless they are interrupted or challenged repeatedly. So I like to think of check, challenge, and change. I say that to myself. If I recognize a bias is existing or may be existing, I check it, meaning I acknowledge it, and I challenge it. Why is this here? And is this how I want to exist? Is this how I want others to experience me? And also, is this how I want to be in existence? And then change, just interrupting, challenging it, and changing it. It's intentionally thinking through it. So check, challenge, and change is something that I say to myself if I see biases arise. Next slide, please.
BE, do you mind if I jump in there?
Go ahead, Ruben.
Folks, this is Ruben speaking. So I just want to reinforce this. I come across this all the time. I think there are great opportunities when in our life we're doing mundane things to check our biases. As I'm going throughout a grocery store, I'm looking at different products, I'm looking at the people there, I'm thinking about the weather. All of those things have a bias in them. If I look at somebody and I'm having a thought about them as a person, that's a great time to be in our thinking and think about, oh, why do I think that? Is that thought based in love and increasing care? Is that thought based in something that I was told to believe unequivocally? Is that thought based in something else? There are just so many things that affect the way that we think. And I just would love for folks to take these opportunities, not to judge yourself, because it can be very easy to be like, oh gosh, what kind of person am I that I'm thinking about that? But to just give yourself a moment. Hey, I had a thought. I'm not valuing that thought, but let's think more about that. It's a really great a small opportunity. You don't have to act on it in that moment. You don't gotta, all of a sudden do backflips in the store while you're looking at the 2% milk or whole milk. You just gotta have a think to yourself, why am I thinking that? What part of that is about destruction, taking someone down, policing someone, and what is the alternative? And there's always an alternative for you. And I want to encourage us to take those moments. And thank you so much, B, for allowing me to interrupt.
And then B, could I also add on as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is Katrina speaking. Just to add on to what Rueben was saying is I think it's so important in those moments to move past the shame or the fear that may freeze you to not think through and really decontextualize, such as Rueben, of thinking, where was that frame of reference developed? And it's, in my opinion, more dangerous to say like, oh, I don't have any biases, or when those feelings or thoughts come up for you, to push it down and make them invisible, is similar to, as Rueben shared, is to really dig deep, move past shame, move past fear, to think, where is that coming from? Why is that coming up? And recognizing it and bringing it to light. And without doing that, that's how racism or any ism continues to perpetuate, is when we make it invisible or when we try to give it a pass.
Thank you so much, Rueben, Katrina, for your additional thoughts. Like, spot on. And so we'll move to the next slide. I'm going to move past this one quickly. We wanted to show this as a frame of reference. We have no time to really analyze this further. Like, this could be its whole session right here of Life Cycle about biases, but particularly breaking down the attitudes, beliefs, feelings in the discourse and action, and really breaking it down on the worldly level, societal level, individual level, but just wanted to give a visual of what it looks like. So we can go to the next slide. However, breaking this down of when we're saying individual, societal, and worldly levels, so what are these biases usually manifest as and how they show up? On the individual level, microaggressions, prejudice, discrimination. We say direct racism, right? Societal level, stereotypes, discrimination, institutional racism. And at a worldly level, colonialism, imperialism, the enslavement of people, genocide, ethnic cleansing. So biases manifest and they show up to, again, perpetuate and sustain these, I would say, horrific things that we experience have seen in life. Next slide. So, internalized oppression. So we're moving from biases to internalized oppression. Again, we're talking about those societal ills that exist that prevent change to happen, that prevent anti-racism to be the foundation, and pro-equity to be the foundation and centered in how we exist. So how it works with internalized oppression: the dominant identity group of power, privilege, and resources on all three levels externally oppress a marginalized identity or group. And then the marginalized group internalizes the external oppression, and it's projected through externally oppressing members of the same identity group or other identity groups, or it could be or internally oppressing oneself. So this is, again, yes, we are talking about larger change and how you can affect change externally, but also internally. This is how internalized oppression affects folks. So next slide. And this affecting people creates barriers for the change to occur. So it says here, pathway 1, pathway 2. So in pathway 1, we're talking about inward, right? So we're talking about internally. It's projected inward, it's internalized and affects how you view yourself, how you move, what actions you take, how you think, how you behave, how you act. Internalized oppression and taking it in pathway 1 internally impacts the decisions you make about yourself and for yourself. It can be so embedded in your subconscious you don't even realize. So when it is perpetuated externally, pathway 2 is projected out. Hurt people hurt people. The externalized oppression you experience and internalize can be projected outward and put on someone else. So internalized oppression can be rooted in feelings like fear, insecurities, and not being good. Next slide. And, you know, some of you may have heard the crab mentality. It's also said like crabs in a barrel mentality. If I can't have it, neither can you. If I can't do it, neither can you. If I can't see the bigger picture, neither can you. If I can't be successful, neither can you. And if I can't achieve more, neither can you. And so the next couple of slides will also show some manifestations of what internalized oppression looks like. So we'll look at those. Colorism, stereotype threat, crabs in a barrel, respectability politics, intracommunal policing. And you also see that it's indicated pathway 1 and pathway 2 of just how these things manifest as well. And the next slide, wait, did we get to the next? No, intracommunal policing. Let's try the next one. Yeah. Family disciplinary action, internalized misogyny, internalized misogynoir. And this one, biracial, multiracial conundrum, that is not an official term. The conundrum was just kind of to encompass again, those ills and how this manifests and represents, and it shows itself in society. And so we're going to keep moving because we're going to move into anti-racism. So in thinking through the steps that we have talked about thus far, and particularly here in step 4, it leads us to why we must exist in anti-racism. Anti-racism is a process of actively identifying and opposing racism. So actively identifying those manifestations of those societal ills that exist and opposing them. The goal of anti-racism is to challenge racism, actively change policies, behaviors, beliefs that perpetuate racist ideas and action. Anti-racism is rooted in action. Again, it's about taking steps to eliminate racism at the individual, institutional, and structural level. So it takes action and continuous action. To be an anti-racist, to root yourself in pro-equity means it is action that is required and continuous action. So step 4 actions to take is on the next slide. So again, thinking through when it comes to the life cycle of biases, are you harming or helping? Where are you in the cycle? What are you going to do with the power, privileges, and resources you have? When you think about how you service others and you in the workplace, are you affected by internalized oppression? Which pathway does it take if it is affecting you? And what do you want to do about it as well? So some actions to take for step 4. Now we're going to move into step 5, which is focus, commit, and build at least one of these things every day. So expertise, skills, habits, self-introspection. So when we say the work of being an anti-racist, the work of being pro-equity centered, it does take a level of expertise, it does take skill building, it does take habit forming, and it does take you being in a state of self-introspection. So we'll look at the next slide. Again, focus, commit, and build. This is being in action. Focus, commit, and build these 4 things. In the area of change, you see, focus, commit, and build your knowledge. to develop your expertise, tools that you use to develop skills in your skill set. Being an anti-racist is building your skill set. Actions to practice. You practice those actions, you build the habits, and also a sustainable future. So that is the self-introspection, and that is the critical thinking. So if you get better about 1% every day for a year, you are 37 times better than a year before. And that's by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. So, this work is ongoing. It requires an active, intentional interaction with new information, tools, and concepts. It will be uncomfortable, but discomfort provides rich soil for growth. Discomfort is not a dirty word. And shout out to Rueben for sharing that with us as an office and a team. So we're moving to the actions to take with step 5. And again, found an accountability partner to discuss steps 1 through 4 often. And these are internal to your agency, to your work as well, and thinking through in your personal life as well. Get to know your neighbors, your neighborhood, engage and build relationships with business resource groups. There are times that business resource groups have a lot of activities throughout the year, and when they specifically invite people outside of their communities to engage with those activities. Join a book club. Again, we're talking about self-introspection, knowledge building as well. So join a book club, building your skill set. When's the last time you invited someone different than you to your home, shared a meal, as we like to say, break bread? How often do you engage at community events? Again, self-introspection. Are you journaling, meditating, seeking coaching, guidance, and also following anti-racist thought leaders on social media? Again, that 1% better every day mentality, but also just building your skill set in anti-racism. Again, this is how we build a PEAR ecosystem. We are building our skill sets to sustain a PEAR ecosystem. Okay, we're going to move to step 6. We have to give ourselves permission to fumble in practice. Grace, forgiveness, and humility. Next slide, please. So grant yourself grace. This work requires continuous learning necessary for growth. We are human, so keep this in mind about forming new habits and don't get discouraged. It is the work of resiliency. Forgive your fumbles. Fall forward, continue on. Humility, allow yourself to not understand everything yet. Every day is a new opportunity to recommit. True humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. John Lewis. So a fact, it takes an average of 66 days to form a new habit according to research published in the European Journal of Social Psychology. Have to cite your sources, right? Your brain is a muscle and it can be trained towards your goals. And then we'll look at actions to take with step 6 of grace, forgiveness, and humility. Coming up with 4 to 6 mantras for yourself, centered around grace, forgiveness, and humility. When embarking on courageous conversations in conflict, difficult situations, practice approaching the conversation with an open mind and curiosity. Listen to understand, not to respond and be understood. And also, we have this complete the activity in the slide called Progress, Not Perfection. I think I've seen folks asking if you can have access to the slideshow. And with that access, you will see this activity on the next slide of Progress, Not Perfection, but I will just give an overview of it. So next slide, please. So the dominant culture often tells us that nothing is worth doing if it cannot be perfect. But great things often come through a very messy, non-linear process. We can resist perfectionism and foster innovation when we celebrate progress over perfection. And so those processing questions in progress, not perfection. What is a project you're currently working on? How has perfectionism held you back in that work? what are 3 things you learned as a part of that project? And also, what are 3 milestones of progress you can celebrate? So it's about progress, not perfection. It's about being your best, not perfection. And so all these are key and core elements of how we self-reflect and center ourselves in understanding where we are and where we could contribute, where we could be leaders to build a PEAR ecosystem internally in our agencies, in how we lead the work, and also externally in our communities and in our own personal lives. And so I believe the next slide, I'm going to hand it off to Rueben. And so again, hope you enjoy my voice. I'll be back. However, I'm going to go off mic for a little bit. Rueben, you can take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, B. So, first of all, I want to address, yeah, we will be getting the slides to y'all afterwards. Don't worry about that. I'm trying to figure it out right now to drop something in the chat, but we are just going to take the time now. We're going to go ahead and take a break. I know the session ends at 9:30, so we want to provide a small break for y'all just so y'all can take a breather, think about what happened. We're going to think about steps 1 to 6 and take that as an activity. We're going to think about, there are different calls to action on each of those. We're going to think about the things that we can do, the things that we can improve while we're taking a break. It might be an active break. You might be getting up from wherever you're sitting, doing some of the stretches that Katrina brought us through. Might just, be going to fill up on whatever drink you're enjoying this morning. But go ahead and take a break. I'll try to drop the file I'm trying to get in here. It looks like I don't have access to it right now, but I'll do my best to do that. But go ahead and take a break, y'all, and we'll be back at 9:12 to continue with the rest of the session. All right, we'll go ahead and give it another minute for folks to return. Thank you so much for joining us today, sticking with us through our technical difficulties. So what we wanted to do right now then was to open it up for some Q&A. We know that we gave folks a lot of information. We really wanted to make sure that this was a rich experience for y'all. But we recognize that we gave a lot, and we want to make sure that the end of the session is spent offering some time for folks to ask any questions that they have. We have a bit more of a presentation, but we're gonna go ahead and just put that on to the beginning of our next session, starting a little later. So that's a little teaser for y'all, a little encouragement to come back. But for right now, if you want to raise hands or put it in the chat, if you have any questions about what we've presented here this morning, we would love to hear those. In the lull right now, I just want to take a moment to thank our ASL interpreters today. They've been doing an excellent job. You can show a little love for them with your reactions or the chat.
All right. Sorry, I was talking while I was not on mic. I apologize for that. Rueben, if I could jump in and say, feel free to drop into the chat any questions you may have, come off mic or unmute, raise hand, or also drop in the chat any reflections, applications, opportunities for growth, strengths that you already see. It could be in your personal life. It could be in your professional life. This is a safe space, and we appreciate your vulnerability to share yourself and where you're at in this journey. Thank you. I see some comments coming into the chat. One is, that was good. These fun facts are exciting. Oh, that's a little ahead. Need to scroll down further. For hosts, what has been your most powerful experience implementing PEAR?
I'm processing. I'm thinking of the experiences. If I can choose one, I would say, in the space, we are, consultants, Katrina, Rueben, and I. And so we consult with state agencies, right, on implementing PEAR, providing like thought partnership and just some guidance and technical assistance. However, I have had an experience with an agency that has been working through implementing PEAR and their PEAR ecosystem and developing their strategic action plan. However, being in a PEAR team meeting with that agency, actual community members talking about the manifestation of program and service equity that exists through that work of the agency being very intentional, being led and guided by community. And the community members actually spoke of seeing some realness and manifestation of program and service equity actually happening. It wasn't just the agency saying, hey, look what we've done. No, the community actually spoke and said, we have seen the manifestations of, a PEAR ecosystem being built through the services offered, through the programs that were being offered. So for me, that is it in action. So that was very powerful for me coming from community.
And then someone also dropped in the chat, I just want to acknowledge everyone that is here, that you are part of the solution. This work is hard. So please also do not forget to take care of yourself. Definitely in agreement of, that self-care and taking care of yourself. I'm going to read that question again. What has been your most powerful experiments implementing PEAR? I think for me, it's really been developing the relationships and really understanding each organization and agency across the enterprise and having that learning stance, not coming in with all of the answers, but being part of the solution and walking alongside individuals. I think that that's so important when we're thinking about PEAR, is not coming in as an expert and a know-it-all, but learning along the way and building those trusting relationships. And when it comes to community, really creating those opportunities for restitution and repair when harm has been done, and supporting agencies to walk alongside and support what that can look like, and also supporting agencies of really thinking through what is authenticity and supporting community and really ensuring that community has a voice and a voice at the table. And I think the other piece too of being powerful experience in implementing PEAR is the intersections between shared power and the PEAR consultants, and how we can support and uplift one another as we are working with agencies, and ensuring that it's not a roadblock of, oh, well, you have to talk to shared power before you can talk to us, but how can those intersect as we walk alongside and move the work forward? Another comment is, I don't necessarily have a question, but just want to express that this was a valuable class and I've gotten so many powerful takeaways that I'm excited to reflect on and share. What's some tips for finding an accountability partner for my PEAR journey? Thank you for the questions and comments coming in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would love to answer Katie's question. I think if there is a business resource group that speaks to you, that speaks to your lived experience, especially, it's always better when we're going into places where our lived experience matches and we can go in safely. I think I found a lot of accountability buddies from going to RAIN. There's a lot of folks there who are ready and willing to do the work. I think that just speaks to folks' willingness in general. Also, you can follow up with your HR team and figure out who is on the PEAR team in your agency. The agency should have a PEAR team set up and they can get you hooked up with those folks. You can get talking with them. And also just make sure you're engaging in authentic conversations with your colleagues, that you're making it known. There's an Instagram account that I love to follow who talks about dropping hints, to other folks subtly, and then just glomming onto those people. I think there are a lot of folks who are ready to do the work with you if you'll open your eyes and ears and find them, which is a little bit wooey, but that's what I got.
Thank you, Rueben. And thank you everyone for your patience as I'm trying to read questions from the chat. So if I miss one of yours, please know it's not intentional, and we will save this chat before we close out so that we are able to address them. Heather wrote, besides ignoring them, how do y'all suggest we can individually make an impact on people who are against the PEAR initiative in general? Some people are very outspoken in their mutual faceted hate, and it can be intimidating to call them out. Will this maybe be addressed in another session?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Bea, I saw you come off camera. Do you have something to say about that? Great, great, great. So listen, I think this is a great question. I struggle with this all the time. And I think similar to your family, you can't choose who you work with. These folks are gonna be there. I think going back to Katie's question, finding those people who are going, go with the goers. We're not gonna be able to change that person, especially if this person, is so outspoken. They are animated to be outspoken against PEAR, and that seems to me, based on your question, what they're gonna do. This is the way forward. This is what Washington State has committed to. So you can be sure that sooner or later, those folks are going to self-select out because they're going to see the more that the state commits to this, the more that the work becomes real on all levels, they are going to self-select out because and it's okay. This is not a place for them. This is not a place where they want to be. But the state is committed to pro-equity and anti-racism, and that's the way forward. And so I think, I'm not sure if that's helpful, but that's my perspective, and I'd love to hear if my other co-hosts have any other perspective on that.
Hey y'all, I have to pause you for a second to address an access need. I just want to make sure that someone's able to spotlight Pro Bono ASL Antonio. Okay, I see them now spotlighted. Thank you. That's really important to have both of them spotlighted so that when viewers view, they're using ASL interpreters, that they have access to the information. And it appears there might be some confusion about pinning, which is understandable. So we'll try to make sure that our moderators, basically that everyone knows, because it was so confusing. But thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Vic, for that. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Vic. Rueben, thank you. I was thinking go with the goers. Again, remember the work of anti-racism, right, and pro-equity is continuous action. So momentum, and I'm thinking if we think about systems and providing systems equity, not only culturally will people be like, oh, the state is serious about this. The environment in which I am and the culture in which I am is not going to sustain my resistance to being an anti-racist, or my resistance to be pro-equity centered. The system also has to be able to highlight it and call it out in itself, that folks cannot continue to exist if they are resistant, reluctant, have apathy towards being an anti-racist and being pro-equity centered. So it's culture and it's systems change as well, but continuous action builds momentum for change. And so, you know, as difficult as it is, that's where the resiliency comes in. And we have to have that continuous action, even as Rueben said, go with the goers. And that's it. We want a critical mass to continue to push, to disrupt, to dismantle, to create that change that we are seeking. So go with the goers as well. And also, it is the responsibility. If you are a leader or for leaders in agencies, to create and manifest culture that folks who are resistant to building a PEAR ecosystem, that they don't have space to continue to resist. We just have to call it out, and we have to be clear that they don't have space to continue to resist and be apathetic, if you be oppositional towards building and sustaining a PEAR ecosystem. And that is also on leadership, not only in agencies, but also for our state to sustain that our commitment to building and sustaining a PEAR ecosystem. So we have to call it, name the dynamic, and so we have to be in action and continuous momentum to create that change.
Thank you so much, Bea. One thing that I'd like to add on to going with the goers or thinking of the early adopters is I think sometimes those voices can grow loud when it's presented and viewed as this is a standalone. This is something that's outside of what work is. And so finding those ways, whether it's through RCWs, whether it's through evals, whether it's through legislation, you know, you could, land on the legislation passed by Governor Inslee regarding PEAR, but then embedding that into every cornerstone and system within an agency. So it's not a standalone aspect of the job. And I'm just pulling from my experience of being an administrator and really using that strategy when we're thinking of racial justice, equity, and advancing those systems, is there are the naysayers, and sometimes those voices can be extremely loud. But the more you can position that work as this is our work, this is our job, and this is where it shows up in every aspect of our day, and this is the application, and this is the outcome, and this is who it serves, and this is who it benefits, and this is who's uplifted, and this is who's removed from the margins into the center, and really systematizing that, I think that allows those early adopters and some who may be on the fence to grow larger and stronger. Another strategy too is, instead of being the voice, is pulling some of those early adopters in and talking through their experience and how that's impacted the day-to-day operations or their service delivery. And so instead of it being your voice, and I'm speaking from me, of something that like I valued and I believed and that was so important to me to impact students' lives and outcomes and families' experience to uphold the dignity and respect, is bringing those to the forefront as another strategy. And I know we're coming close to time. And so I really appreciate everyone dropping in the chat their comments and really allowing for this dialogue to transpire at the end. We're going to do a bit of shifting on our end to move some of our slides and to keep that moving forward. Bea or Rueben, is there anything you'd like to add before we transition off? And then we will save the chat.
Yes, thank you so much. We left out a lot of good stuff from here so that we can leave space for your questions. So please join us for number 2. We have a lot more to come, and we're so excited that y'all are choosing to spend your time with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. And also, yes, stay with us for the rest of the day. Keep coming back. We want to see you all. So thanks again.